at the Sierra Room. Tamara, could you call the roll, please?
Chair Drews,
Here.
Vice Chair Darney,
Here.
Commissioner Block, Commissioner
Here.
Hayes, Commissioner Schmitter,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Spelda. Here. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Next item is public comments. Members of the public who wish to address the commission may approach the podium at this time to speak on matters relevant to or within the authority of the Historic Resources Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this public comment portion of the agenda. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to C for possible action. Approval of minutes from May 10th, 2018.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Motion and a second. Any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item D, modification of the agenda. Agenda management notice, items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relating to an item on the agenda at any time. Hope?
Item E1 should be removed at the request of the applicant.
Thank you, Hope.
Will it be on a future meeting?
Not in the immediate future. The applicant has decided not to pursue that improvement.
Okay. Any other commission member requests for modifications? Hearing none, we'll move to E, public hearing matters. E2, for possible action, HRC-18-122, to consider request to change out windows and to install a door on properties owned residential office RO located at 496 West Ann Street, APN 001-185-06. Oh.
Okay, I have posted on the board an aerial of the property. The subject property is at the northeast corner of the intersection of West Ann Street and North Minnesota. The building's located in the southern portion of the property, and the northern portion of the property is a parking lot. Per the assessor's records, the home was built in 1930. The survey data provides very little information about this property, essentially saying it was part of the block that was developed with 400 West Ann, 902 and 908 North Division. As part of the applicant's currently pursuing a conversion to a duplex, and as part of that conversion, the applicant needs to modify windows to meet the building code requirements for egress windows. The applicant is also seeking to install an additional door. The applicant has selected the non-primary facades, specifically the north and east facades, to accommodate the egress windows. You may have seen in the application that the applicant had initially proposed an egress window on the western facade, but he moved that window over to the northern facade, so that wouldn't face the street. For replacement windows, the applicant is proposing to utilize the Cascade vinyl windows, and there's a cut sheet in your packet of those. For the door, the applicant is proposing to utilize a 6-panel door, and I met the applicant on site, and we literally walked across the street to Herman Bauer's property and took a picture of the door, and he said, "That's the door I want." The development standards 5.16 address guidelines for windows. What the guidelines tell us is when the original windows shall be retained and repaired when at all possible, and that when replacement is necessary, a window of duplicate design shall be used. In terms of the guidelines for doors, section 5.7 says the location and style contributes to the overall character and frequently acts to define the style of the building. In terms of the windows, the existing windows on the primary facades are not proposed for replacement. It's where the modification to the opening that a new window is proposed. So because there will be a modification to the actual opening, you can't retain the existing window. It's not going to fit anymore because they're making the window bigger. So in the two cases, Staff finds that it will comply with the guidelines because the idea of repairing, it's not an issue of repairing the window, it's that you're changing your fenestration to make it bigger, and so it will be a new window. In terms of the door, the applicant is proposing to put the door along the east elevation. I'll go back to the east elevation here. The east elevation faces the neighboring property owner. It doesn't face a street, and so staff does not believe that the door will impact the character or style of the building, given that it's on a secondary elevation. So staff is supportive of this request. Mr. Miles, the property owner, is present, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Hope.
Hope, that window opening is going to be replaced by a door.
Yes, on the east side, there's a replacement of a window and the inclusion of a door.
Okay, so the door is not going at that window opening.
Now, I believe it's next to the opening. No, it's at the window? Okay, it is going where the window is, sorry.
Okay, that's
I've got to
good. And
revisit
then
my plans.
is there a window going, then a new window going somewhere
Yes,
next to it?
and I can direct you to the plan set. It's the eastern elevation is, if you go to the last page of E2, you'll see your eastern elevation.
Isn't it the window right next to the electrical box?
Oh, that,
Or is it just the door? Do you want to just come to the mic, John? Come forward.
Just hit the button to talk.
You need to state your name for the
hi, I'm
record.
John Miles.
Oh, can you Once more. press the button?
There you go.
Hi, I'm John Miles.
Do you want to outline the scope for them?
Okay, that elevation you're looking at, that
Oh,
is,
one more time. You just. Sorry. There you go.
that elevation you're looking at is a west elevation. None of those windows on that elevation
Ooh.
will be
Uh-oh.
replaced.
Sorry, John. I messed up my pictures. That's
Okay.
north. Okay, so I don't have east. I thought I had east.
You don't have the,
Not with me. I thought it was on here.
So the east should be
There's a
facing the parking
photo
lot.
of, I think, hopefully, a photo of the east in the packet. Okay. Okay, if you look in your packet, you'll see the eastern facade, and you'll see the picket fence and the DirecTV satellites dishes. They're looking at this.
right.
I'll show, do you want to see it? Okay.
Just say the microphone when the light is on. You don't have to hold it. You just press it once.
So John, do you want to just walk them through the changes on the east elevation?
Okay. Well, that was
Just good.
That was an original door underneath that porch. That one is not going to be used. That's still going to be enclosed. But the window to the left of that door, that is a window I want to replace. And all I'm going to do is basically have the same size. I just need to make it wider for egress because that's what the fire department wants. So because it's going to be a bedroom in that part of the house. And the door is kind of where the window is underneath that fruit tree. If you can see it heading towards the back, you can see a little window there. And that's the window I want to put the new door in. Take that window out and put the door there.
So on your sketch, there's no door. It looks like the door is to the south of that window, last page. So that door is moved to the north, is that correct, where the window is?
Yeah, there's actually two windows on that wall. You really can't really see it
Oh, okay,
because the tree's hiding it. It's closer to the corner,
okay.
but there is actually two windows there, yes.
So the door that used to be underneath the porch is decided over, right?
It has been for, I guess, years,
Okay.
since the original house has been there. I just pulled all the asbestos siding off. That's why it looks like it is. We abated all the asbestos, so.
Nice.
Any
Okay, so
questions?
again, for clarification, the door and the window that you're proposing are going in existing openings?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So is it that you want to go with a 6-panel metal door like Herman Bauer put in, or do you want a period-appropriate door?
Well, I could go either way. It doesn't really matter to me as long as I get it. 6 panels is always good. It's not a good steel door. Appropriate, I could go with,
Could you go with a period wood door?
I could, yes. A
Okay.
solid core wood door, yes.
I have a bunch,
You have a bunch?
and you can have one
You got
if
it.
that's something you'd rather do. Okay,
I would love that, yeah, sure.
okay.
And then the west elevation in your description here is actually the north elevation, is that correct?
That, what you're looking at there, that is kind of the one window is the one I want to replace because there's a bedroom there. The one that has the shiplap siding on it, that actually points towards a parking lot.
So the window in the, without siding on it, that window will stay in place, that's,
That window will stay in place, yes, because that one actually does meet egress, because that is a bedroom there. It's just the one on the other side does not.
Those windows meet egress?
What's that?
Those windows meet egress?
Yeah, see how wide that one is? That one does. As long as it's 3 by 2 foot opening, clear.
Well, it's 5.7 square feet of openable area, not only the height and width, but it's.
Right, but 3 times,
5.7 square feet.
3 times 2 is 6 square feet.
Hope, is the application okay the way it stands, or do we need to revise it?
I can ask Mr. Miles to revise it. It was a change in the field. The application asked for a modification on the west elevation, and you'll see I didn't even include the drawing for the west elevation, because when we were in the field, he said, I'm going to leave the west elevation as is, and we'll look at this window on the north elevation that faces the parking lot, because that one doesn't face the road. So the way this was advertised was for the north elevation, so I think advertised-wise, we're good. We can certainly have Mr. Miles submit a letter modifying the request.
I'll make a comment, Mike. I like the fact you're keeping the height of the window the same, because it appears to me that that's consistent around the house as far as how tall the windows are. The additional width doesn't bother me to go from 2.4 or 2.6 to a 3.0. But I do I will not vote for the vinyl windows, vinyl replacement, just because they are highly visible on this elevation.
I guess my question would be, would you be opposed to using another material other than vinyl for those windows?
Steel?
You could do wood with metal clad and things like that, or,
Well, there's, most all wood windows now are clad. Vinyl clad windows, there's wood like Anderson's and Marvin's, they're all vinyl clad, but in different colors for wood. There's one company that does make just this wood window, and but they're pretty expensive, but that's what I gotta go with, I'll go with it, but,
well, I know that when I had some windows custom made by Jim over at Woodworking Specialties, we emulated the exact originals with single pane glass and everything, and I know Chuck does it out in Mound House, but in the Andersons, I put in the non-historic portion of my property. The price was virtually the same between the Andersons, and I think Jim was a little bit lower. Obviously, Anderson, it was a metal clad, and it had a double pane, where the rest are single pane, but I don't really care about the double pane in those old drafty houses, but I use vinyl shutters. But if it was something other than vinyl clad, you wouldn't be necessarily opposed to it, or?
I won't be opposed to it. I was just trying to be cost effective in what I was doing, so.
Right. I get hives from when I see vinyl, but that's just me.
Well,
So.
I mean, those windows aren't original to the original house anyway. None of those windows, those all have been replaced at one time or the other. I don't know when they were.
To me, with that quarter round that's on all the windows, that could probably be a product of the 40s or 50s from.
Well, they're all double pane windows.
Are they?
Yeah, and they all tilt in and removable, so they're
So they're
double
probably in
acting
the
windows.
last 20 years, probably, you think?
I would say so, yeah. I don't
Okay.
know if it went through the building department or not, so.
Are they wood?
They are wood, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Before the commission goes, just for the benefit of the record, John, can you verify that you're not requesting to modify or change out the windows on the west elevation, and rather you're seeking to change out the window on the north elevation?
Yes, I'm only seeking the north elevation on that window, yes.
And then on the east elevation, a new window and a new door?
New window and a new door on the east elevation, correct?
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion. I move to approve HRC 18-122, a request to modify the fenestration on the north side and east side of the building to allow for a replacement egress window other than vinyl and a new 6-panel door on the property-zoned residential office located at 496 East or West Ann Street, APN 001-185-06, based on the finding that the request is consistent with the design guidelines for the historic district and the Secretary of the Interior standards as noted in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second, any questions?
Can I just verify I got the changes? The changes were to allow for a replacement egress window other than vinyl and a new 6-panel door. And the only change was vinyls, the word vinyl's removed and replaced with a replacement egress window other than vinyl.
Can I amend my motion because I obviously forgot about the discussion 5 minutes ago? May I start over with, I move to approve HRC 18-122, a request to modify the fenestration on the north side and east sides of the building to allow for enlarged egress windows with the product other than vinyl and add a replacement door panel of the period based on the chairman's approval on property-zoned residential office located at 496 West Ann Street, APN 001-185-06, based on the finding that the request is consistent with the design guidelines for the Historic District and the Secretary of Interior standards as noted in the staff report, and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report. And that's based on having John look at some of my own doors, and if he finds one suitable for the taking that he may have.
Do I have a second to the
Second.
amended motion?
To the
Motion and a
amendment.
second. Any questions? So what you're proposing, Jed, is that the replacement door come before the chair?
No.
For approval?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Before, when he picks out a door, I've got probably 20 doors, so.
I gotta come back here?
No, you have to come back, we have to get together and then.
Yeah, you can shoot a picture to Hope or something and
We'll send Hope a picture.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, John. It's looking good. It looks different now that it's not sitting up in the air.
John, I'll get together with Hope and get your information, and we can meet up if you have to leave before the end of the meeting.
You may want, this is going to take a while then.
Next item is E3 for possible action, HRC-18-192, to consider a request to replace an existing wooden picket fence with a vinyl white picket fence on property zoned single-family 6,000 SF6, located at 302 Thompson Street, APN 003-133-31. Hope.
Thank you. Our applicant's not here, but I think it's okay if we proceed. She's aware of the meeting. I did send her the agenda and the staff report, and she acknowledged both. You also have late material on this item. The subject property is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of 3rd and Thompson Street. Per the assessor's records, the home was built in 1915 with an addition constructed in the 1980s. Per the 1980 survey information, the structure is environmentally and architecturally compatible with surrounding buildings. I'll go back to the house. The applicant initially wanted a vinyl picket fence, but did not answer the, quote, findings that you created when you amended the code. I had accepted the application and was allowing the findings to come in later. She found that she wasn't able to make those findings or address those questions that the commission had identified being necessary to address when considering vinyl, and she has decided to go with wood. I did leave this on the agenda because she is suggesting a scala. This is the existing fence, which I have on the board right now. The applicant is proposing a scalloped design for the fence, as well as a curved entryway feature. So in looking at the fence guidelines advise that the new fence must not be constructed in any manner that would adversely affect the primary views of any building, and it should be made of a material associated with fences in the historic district. The staff does find that this will meet those design guidelines in that it will not obscure the view of the building right now. And if you went out there, it's actually really mature landscaping. It's really hard to get a good look at the building because of all the landscaping along the front and on Thompson Street. Also, staff does find that given they're going to use wood, it is a material that's associated with the district, so staff is recommending approval of this fencing. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Hope. Any questions?
Is the trellis structure also going to be made of wood?
I think it should be, because to have consistency with the design guidelines, I think we have to use a material that's consistent with the district.
Can I just add that if they do that, it would probably be proper to have them submit some sort of a design drawing of the arbor, just so we know the scale and the size and the height and the width and all that. Make sure it, is in context with the fence. Otherwise, I have no issues with the fence as long as it's made of wood.
Any other questions, comments? Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I just had one more question, I guess. Sorry. I just want to emphasize that whatever the design is will be wood, and if it is radically different than the version we're seeing here, that maybe it should be approved by the chair, because I'm not sure that they can get this design in wood. So that's my only consideration.
I would also suggest that based on her facade, that she not go with that arched, she go with a square top, but I'm not going to be picky about it because it is reversible.
I think if it's all wood, it's great.
All we want is
You ready for a motion?
I will suggest, for the benefit of clarity, I'm going to suggest condition number 1 be modified to say the fence and trellis material shall be wood.
So if you could just include that in your motion, Jay. Are there any other questions before I call for a motion? again? Okay, go ahead, Jen.
I move to approve HRC 18-129 on property zone single-family 6,000 located at 602 Thompson Street, APN 003-133-31, based on the finding that the request is consistent with the design guidelines for the Historic District and the Secretary of Interior standards as noted in the staff report, and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, including that the fence and trellis both be made, material must be made out of wood. Wow. Modified city here.
Motion to have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, E4 for possible action, HRC-18-118, to consider potential projects that could be funded with the Historic Preservation Fund in fiscal year 2018. Hope.
Okay, the 2018 Historic Preservation Fund has a short cycle this year. They're accepting applications September 21, which maybe we get funding in October or November, hard to say, and everything has to be complete by August. Some programs we did look at and talk to the SHPO's office about was a facade improvement program. So we thought it would be good to have a program where we could match with a property owner. But, and I have to correct, I called out a 401c3 instead of a 501c3, so sorry about that. But you can only do a facade improvement program if the owner of the property is a 501c3 and the property is on the National Register. So we really didn't have, what I was really looking at, to be honest, was Jack Spar, to see how we could work with Jack Spar. So that wasn't going to work. The second thing we looked at was some type of program where we could have local tradespeople do some type of apprenticeship and do it jointly with the Builders Alliance. And the Builders Alliance was very interested. But then when we started trying to identify tradespeople, and given the short window we had a lot of trouble identifying the tradespeople, and we can't really invite them till we know we have funding if they're coming from out of the area, and then we have to have everything 100% done by August. So it just felt tight, and it felt like something to pursue for maybe 2019. It's particularly that it aligns with the interests of the Builders Alliance in that they'd love to see more trained, sort of an apprenticeship type program. So then the last thing I looked into was a conference, because we did get money to go to Forum, and for 3 of you to go to Forum, but only 1 was able to go. So only Michelle was able to get training this year. Mike had training 2 years ago, but training does qualify if people are interested in training. So I was looking for area conferences that would meet the time frame. And there is a conference in San Francisco in November, but I'm not certain we'll have the funding in time. So I think that's a little too risky. So there is the California State Conference in Palm Springs in May, which is kind of smack in the middle of the calendar, if there's interest in that. And I'm happy to hear other ideas. Having said that, we have to do a 40% match on whatever we get. An in-kind service, so if you went to a conference, your time at the conference counts towards the match. So that's a pretty easy match to make. Something other than that, it's difficult because we don't have anything budgeted to serve as a match, and the staff in particular doesn't have a lot of downtime to allocate to a program to qualify for the match. Things are really busy on the development front. And with that, I will stop talking and listen to the commission.
Hope, could we use HPF funds to put on a presentation for the realtors and contractors in the district? We could put on our own educational program, maybe ask SHPO to participate in it?
Yes, that would qualify. I would need more specifics, like we were using as our trainers and things like that. If we're bringing people in, or are you all volunteering, or how would you see that structured?
I would think if we got with Jim Bertolini, we could divvy tasks up and at least do a half day presentation or something, or a few hours between community development and volunteers from the commission, just to let people know what our guidelines are and get that out. It's kind of a,
Hope, on Jack's Bar being a 501c3, would it have to be a 501c3 by September 21st, or could it be a 501c3, say, by September 30th?
Okay, first of all, it's not a 501c3. The
Okay,
owner of Jack's
I'm-
Bar is not a
Correct.
501c3.
If it was a 501c3 by the end of September, could we
No,
apply
I
for
think
that
at the
grant?
time of application, because my application would have to qualify under the Park Service guidelines.
Okay,
for them
because
to approve
it's
funding.
it's on the National Register in the last time.
Right, I know, trust me.
And I wish you had called me last week. Last time I did a 501c3, it took 11 days, working days from the IRS.
John Lear wasn't involved.
That's unheard of. I've done a lot too. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's
11 days?
that's what I do for a living. No, the Athletic Foundation for Western Nevada College, that took 10 days. Oh, geez, what was the last one? We
Is
did
that the state
we
or
did the
with the Fed?
foundation for Carson City Parks and Rec in 10 days. That's through the federal government.
That's through the
IRS
IRS.
501c3. It's a 1023 easy, and if you do it enough, it is easy.
It's kind of, it's gonna be-
But that's, it took me literally 10 days for the 3 nonprofits I did, but it's something we could do. Is there another deadline that's farther out than September 21st, or is it the next cycle
The deadline's September 21.
of 18, and then the next deadline would be September 21 of 19? Is that?
Hard to say, because
Okay.
they wait to get their federal money, and, like, we already had one cycle. That's how we got the forum money, is we already did cycle. So I can't say for sure what the next cycle will be. But yeah, if the owner of Jack's Bar was a 501c3, it is on the National Register, and we could look at some type of matching facade grant program.
And if they were a 501c standalone, and this is, I guess, maybe a question for another day, but are there a lot more other granting opportunities with that designation with state?
Actually, what I looked at too is Brewery Arts Center has that church, that former church building that needs work. And so I checked to see if that would qualify for the National Register, because it's owned by a 501c3, but doesn't qualify for the National Register, or it's not on the National Register. And so what SHPO's office suggested is that we do National Register nominations as part of our request for the HPF grant. But I would need funding to do the match, and I don't have funding to do that.
We could talk about the tax credit program, too, at the training. Is Jim Bertolini?
They could do a presentation, that'd be great.
yeah, I think we could probably brainstorm with them on things that's just one of the things that came out with the Curry houses.
I like that,
realtors
and I
don't
also
know.
like, maybe we have a session just on windows and, talk about what actually, meets the standards and,
Yeah. Go over the definitions of metal clad, vinyl clad,
true divided
true
lights.
divided light.
Yeah, muntins.
Okay, so actually, I think if we just send ideas to Hope, we could put that together by
Yeah, I think so.
the end of next week, or at least get something fleshed out that would work.
Just have to talk to SHPO and see if they'd be.
Do we need a motion on this or just direction? Great. Okay. E5 for possible action, HRC-18-114 to consider potential modifications to section 5.16 of the development standards regarding guidelines for windows in the historic district. Hope.
Okay, so it feels like a couple times every year you get windows to review. And in the little bit I've sat with you, that feels like we struggle with that. And so in talking to the chair, we were kind of wondering if it made sense to review the guidelines and see if there was an opportunity to provide clarity in the guidelines. It would help you all with your decision-making and would allow the property owners in the district to better understand the expectations. And I think our experience earlier tonight with the vinyl fence was a really good example, because you all were really struggling with fence materials, but then you amended the guidelines, you included those findings, I say findings with a quote around them, and that really was able to sort of sift through whether it made sense to do vinyl or not. So I'm almost wondering if we have an opportunity for something like that. But what do our guidelines say? Our guidelines say that the original windows shall be retained and repaired when at all possible. And I put all the other wording in your packets. It references the Secretary of the Interior Standards number 2 and 6. So number 2 tells us that the character of the property will be retained and preserved. And number 6 talks about the deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced. And it talks about where the severity of the deterioration requests replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, and so on. So in general, the way I look at preservation is you look at a property and you identify what are the character-defining features of that property. The character-defining features could be the shape of the roof. It could be the materials that are utilized. It could be the windows. But what is it if it is the windows? Is it the fenestration? Is it the pane configuration? Is it the actual glass? Is it, what part of that is it? And I think we have to have that conversation about the role of the window as a character-defining feature in the district, so that we can understand, is that really part of the, what is it in terms of the character of the property? How is the window contributing to that? And is it a distinctive feature? And what part of the window is the distinctive feature? And if we can kind of help identify that and better define that, I think we then could identify to what extent the guidelines may need some modification so that's better articulated. And with that, I'll stop.
Yeah, after the vinyl fence item tonight, I thought the exact same thing. If we could come up with, we may need to further develop or to get some more explanation into our standards.
For sure.
Because when you look at historic windows, all the pieces and parts are an important design feature.
I mean, what Hope said about the character-defining features is correct. So we have to decide if the window is character-defining, or sometimes you don't have, a window that's really awesome, but it's the pattern of fenestration. That's the character-defining feature. And it is case by case, not every window. No, Luann, you can.
No, you're right, but what I'm trying to do is figure out how to operationalize that. So if someone wants to change their windows, can we come up with some kind of a checklist or something so they can answer or help us answer those questions?
So I think, the 5.16, that first couple sentences has just bothered me, because that's really not it. The basic design, symmetrically placed. We have asymmetrical buildings in Carson City that are in the district, and I read that and I go, okay, right away, I'm not happy with that. So anyhow, I picked up the guidelines from Virginia City, and they have a first sentence, and then their second sentence says, windows and their arrangement in a structure are often one of the most significant architectural features of a building. So right away, the homeowner understands that windows are really important. So something so simple like that might help us. And then we go on, and it gets very specific, but that first bit has just always really just not done it for me. I'm like, I'm confused. I know what you're saying, but I'm not seeing that out there. And so anyhow, I think if we have a line that says that windows are important right away, people are understanding why we're going to get upset about it.
So is it the material of the window, or is it the arrangement and the size of the window?
It's
Another question for you. Another question for you. When does something become historic? How many years?
50.
Vinyl windows, introduced in 1954, they're historic today. Before you guys came in, I read a deal about how the aluminum window now is being recognized as a historical component. When we start making windows out of carbon fibers, which we already do, and other things, is the vinyl window going to be historically significant?
Can I comment on that real quick? The aluminum and stuff you just referenced to would be historically significant in a structure built of that same time period. In other words, just because it was allowed in 1954 doesn't mean you should put it on a house built in 1921.
1912, the aluminum window was introduced.
I think we can fall back on that in the comments that are made in our general thing of historically significant to the character of our community and the neighborhood. And if there was no 1920 whatever aluminum windows in the neighborhood at that time, then we should ignore that and go with what we consider more standard.
Can I make a couple comments? I've been thinking about this for a month. My problem isn't with the material. I listen to people go, oh, we don't like vinyl. We don't like this. We don't like that. My problem with this board is the consistency in the application of the standard. So I'm going to have a couple of examples. I'm going to use tonight. You can't have a vinyl window. It has to be wood. We didn't bring up its location in the building, the size of the window. We just said it has to be wood. Did anybody up here in that condition say it has to be divided light? Does it have to be fixed? Does it have to be double hung? Does it have to match the windows in our house? We said a wood window, period. He can do whatever he wants. We didn't follow through with consistency even with what we did tonight. My second point is that we had a lady that came in here with a sandstone building, and we turned her down on a window. We said, you can't use that window, which we approved for Dick Whiffley, 105 feet from her window on the use of that building. Same window that lady wanted to use. We approved Dick Whiffley to use 105 feet away, looking right at it. And I'm going, we're not consistent with what we're doing here. That's my problem. I think that we can define a set of standards and findings that somebody has to fill out. But we have to be very careful about how we determine that and what those materials can be, because really they're all kind of historical now. I think also that we could take our findings and then also place that on the period and the time frame that the building was built. When I look at the number, and I can tell from looking at the one that came in today, those windows were replaced 20, 30 years ago. Are we going to make people go back to the original? Are we going to make them go to the double hung with the counterweights? Those are spring loaded. You know, if you looked at a couple of details, you could see. I just want some findings placed, and then I think that we can do that along with a consistent application of what we expect from anybody that comes in here, whether it's steel, aluminum, vinyl, that we can allow them to really focus on what our intent is. Are we trying to preserve the look of the building, the materials of the building? Can we start to aim it at a period of time that the structure was built, taking into consideration what upgrades were done in the 50s to a building that was built in the 1800s? That's what I want. We have been so inconsistent with people. The first day I sat here, it was this poor little lady that bought those apartments across the street from the Laxalt Legal Building, and we had her here for 5 months from San Jose on those steel windows versus vinyl windows. And I went, what are we doing? And then we'll turn around and give Joanne Ballardini on her remodel of her house on Nevada Street, all vinyl windows. On that structure we let her do. All vinyl windows. We're not consistent. That's my big gripe here. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, I think that's why we want to discuss this, Don, because we recognize that inconsistency. And we have real general guidelines. And as we saw with the fences, the general guidelines get you into trouble as soon as we allow them. And to be honest, we let vinyl windows in all the time. And you're right, we never specify the configuration or anything else. And there are some other details we need to look at. There's shadow lines, there's everything else. And if it's going to be important for us to look at these standards or these guidelines and work them into a forum where people can look at it and address issues. Understand what's important about their building. Present that to us and let us make the decision based upon a number of items on a checklist.
And I think that, just as we did at the fence, if we define findings, and within the findings, I agree with what you said. It can't be global. That sentence, geez, it's not all 19th century stuff. We have some 50s, we have some, yeah. So maybe in our findings, it gets a little bit longer with windows, but we can say, okay, in a period from this time to this time, or if you had a house built in the 1880s, but it was remodeled in the 1950s, that we have to have a way that we can start to allow them to come up with findings that would allow them to use the window that was done in the 50s, not back to the 1840s. And then we come up with a way to consistently apply those standards, for periods, if that's what we do, or we use some other criteria to define how. But I really went to that essence, it's the window placement. It's what it does to the architecture of the building. It is the shadow lines. When I look at, and I'm going to go back to the windows that they're on Nevada Street, all the shadow lines and everything that we wanted out of that paned window, we got Whipley to do. It gave us what we were kind of looking for. I just want to see an even application. Because when I look at that sandstone structure, the thing that I think, and I drove around today and I'm going, the thing that destroys that for me are those darn storm windows. They just destroy that place. But we can't do anything about the aluminum, bronze.
Home Depot.
Yeah.
Can I make one of the things that struck me reading through this before is that right off the bat on the first page, it defines rehabilitation. And I think we've kind of lost that a little bit in the fact that it actually says there, process of returning a property to a state of utility, which tells me that we're acknowledging the fact that this is continuously occupied and living and breathing structure that needs to constantly be updated and upgraded so that humans can occupy. Air conditioning, heating systems, whatever the case might be. We have to, what it doesn't say here is that this is not a restoration. And I want to clarify that because that's where I got myself in trouble. By the way, being on that side of the fence is eviler than you think it is. Let me get a couple more comments on that. In this particular case about the sandstone house we are all talking about here, it became evident to me that one of the issues was the vagueness of the fact that by removing the sashes and storing them doesn't deteriorate the fact that that window still exists and is not compromised. What it does is it tells me that the person that wants to live there wants to keep it in a utility state that it can be livable, and by storing the window or sashes, the next owner can restore the house. If they want to make a museum piece out of it, so be it. The current owner is not responsible for having to go to that state. And that was kind of what I was trying to get out that I didn't successfully.
So the issue I see with that 5.13 is significant to its architectural value. That's something that we need to determine we should be able to figure out a way where, I mean,
So,
there are windows, the Broward Bathhouse has curved bay windows. Those are significant to its to its architectural value. If the Curry House window form was such that it really relates to the architecture and the significance of the building, that makes sense. So, and that's what we need to try to work on with our guidelines is how do we look at all the elements that we're considering and make it consistent?
Don, I actually agree with you on the period. On the period of the house. If as a 1920s house and they could have had aluminum in there or something like that, I think it's with the period. Anything before 1900, putting vinyl in it's a crime. It's 412 North Curry Street, Gary's house 16 years ago. It's the white vinyl and you can't paint the grids on the inside. Then we have the guy on Nevada and William Street that's just nothing but a bear to deal with. And then you got the guy on Division and Caroline Street that's doing anything no matter what. But I think the period is a good idea, and I kind of wanted to ask you this question, what you thought of, say, my house was built in 1875, and they added an addition in 1950 with casement windows, and they wanted to replace them. Would you go based on the original build date or that part of the construction? I'm guessing it would be that part of the construction.
See, that goes back to what Mike was, the place windows, the period. I think at that point, and we've done this in the past, those elements that face the street have to be true to what the building is. Even if you put an addition on, I think those windows, what happens around the other side, I think we do have some latitude there in our decision making. But, you know what? Let me answer that question. Peter Chiquette's house. That's a very, very nice brick home. And then he stepped off to the back and he put that stucco addition on. And what he did with that stuccoed addition, I believe those are vinyl windows in that, is he actually turned that into a negative space that I think really accentuated the original building. So that's a case where I think that we could look at that and how that architecture is done, and so that it complements the true historic home, but he still had the ability to add those bedrooms for his children. I think that's one of the better examples. That was done very tastefully.
I think that's a good example because it almost complements, it doesn't take away. But when we're talking about the windows in my office are 6 feet tall, 1867. My house are 6'6". Curry's house, 1873, are 7 feet. Jack's bar, they're 8 feet. And when I talked to Bill Miles, Bill's like, yeah, we're going to rebuild these windows. I've done it before. But it's almost like the height of the windows, too, would be that you don't really tell, and like the Bliss.
Yeah, that's all part of the architectural feature. If you look at number 6, and one of the issues that every historic commission faces, Michelle knows, Hope knows, Lee knows, I know, everybody comes in with old windows and said, I want to replace them, they're stuck, they don't work. Number 6 says deteriorated, I'm sounding like someone, never mind, will be repaired rather than replaced. We need to make sure that, if people come in because they say, God, there's a draft, I need to pull this old window out and put a new vinyl window in, that doesn't meet number 6 at all. And we need to somehow promote a preservation ethic that lets people know that just because your window's drafty or stuck doesn't give you the free rein to go ahead and pull it out and put a vinyl window in or another wooden window in. Fix the thing. Make it work.
I think part of the mission of this commission is to provide people with that information, because a lot of people don't know that you can fix windows or fix wooden windows. And so just the idea that they come in and we try to persuade them that you can repair it, and we have the literature to help them, or we have people that can help them, is a big step, I think, because that's overcoming some barriers, I think, that people just don't understand.
Like giving like an updatable resource list, possibly, something along those
Well,
lines?
I think just providing with them with some information, and then talking about are the windows original to the building, whatever date it is. If they're the original windows, then they are part of the original design feature of that architecture. So that needs to be taken into consideration. And then if they're replacement windows, or if they want to replace them, do they reflect the architecture and character of the building? Are they in keeping with the design and the architectural style? So in that way, it kind of gets away from what material type it is, but will it fit with the style of the building and the architecture, rather than just limiting it to only wood windows and, 1870s houses. But I agree that that's true.
I think it's education, because a couple bought Doc Gibbons' old office there on Division and 2nd Street, and they get a contractor in there, and they say, we need to replace all the windows. And he just happened to be the guy that built my windows, said, no, we can fix all these and we can rebuild them. Oh, you can. So it's an educational element, and you have people that aren't into historic preservation, like all of us, and Don, and builders and things like that, that oftentimes people rely on a contractor and they get misinformation.
Right.
And I really truly believe that the Curry's house, for example, is she's spending a lot more money than it would cost to fix them. It's not, but that's the trouble that we have, and it's bad information, and maybe it's seminars like this, but trying to get people to go to them and to learn that are really conscious. Not everybody, what I don't understand is why people buy a house in the historic district and then they want to modernize it like a modern house. I mean, clearly, not everybody here lives in the historic district for a reason. And there's some of us nutcases, I'll just say me, that live in it because I like the rattly, leaky windows that function, but everybody's not like that.
But there is a trend, go to a place called San Francisco and see how they modernize, those old Victorians. And that is becoming a little bit more prevalent in what we're seeing going on, is this modernization of these. You can tell by the doors, you can tell with the metalwork that's going on in the building. And the one thing I noticed today is we were talking about the windows in that house that he's in. I was looking at the shiplap siding going, wow, that's been covered up with asbestos shingles forever. That's great material.
And what's interesting about his house, because they made big holes in it to stick these girders through above the flooring, and I'm like, oh my God, maybe it's a good source of siding if he's going to redo it. When I went by there today, they have those pieces and they're putting them back in. And it's really interesting. Siding seems easy enough from that era, but everything's about 1/4 of an inch off every 20s. I've got 5 different eras of siding on my house that from 10 feet you can't tell. And part of this vinyl window thing, it's looking at the Bliss Mansion. When I was sitting on the porch, I went, oh God, look how they made this window fit in this thing, and it wasn't exactly right. But when you're looking at the street view, unless you're looking for a single lock in the center, you can't tell. So, how far away are you looking at it as well? I mean,
Mr. Chair, if I may. First, I want to point out to the commission that if you want to look at the findings, in quotes, for fences, it's actually kind of interesting. It might be sort of convertible. It's on page 4 of your staff report on 18129. They're listed. The other thing is, I appreciate all the discussion on education, but it's going to be really helpful for staff if we can better articulate the expectation in the guidelines. If you don't want vinyl windows, say it. Just like you said, we don't want vinyl fences, but you didn't want to shut the door the whole way. You wanted to leave it open a crack. And so you said, but there might be times we're okay with it. And here are those times, under these circumstances, those were the findings. And I agree that education's a piece of it, but when I get a call at the staff level and they say, hey, I want to put up a vinyl fence, it's so easy for me now. It's not like, well, yeah, there's vinyl out there, I'm not really sure. It's like, well, actually, they discourage it, but if you can make these findings, they'll consider it, and here are the findings. So I think similar with vinyl windows, as opposed to, well, they've kind of been all over the place in the last 5 years or whatever, being able to say, well, they discourage vinyl windows. They'll probably vote no, but they're willing to look at your application, but you have to answer these questions.
Maybe we redirect and just say replacement windows, because that covers the gamut. And what we really want are people to seriously consider keeping their old windows. And if you're going to replace it, then these are the things you need to look at and
That-
present to us to
But-
make the case for replacement.
But I think that's exactly what Hope is talking about. You tell me if I'm wrong. We develop a good set of findings, and there's criteria for, we don't have general findings. We can have findings that are specific to certain periods of time, certain types of architecture, and we list those out, and they can read them. They don't have to come here and we have a debate about it. They're either going to be able to answer the findings or they're not.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do is focus on giving the people a tool that they can check off and pretty much determine on their own if they can qualify, with Hope's assistance.
So I have a couple thoughts. One is, I feel like definitely one of our grant opportunities could be to redo our guidelines and make them, there's guidelines out there that are really good, because I use them a lot, and they're not ours. So there are some good guidelines.
Just steal some.
Oh, yeah, I've got a huge amount.
The highest form of compliment, so.
And because we're all interpreting the standards, we're all following the standards. It's just how we communicate the standards to, our community members. So then the other thing is, I wonder if we can do a sheet that, we give to the property owner that has, they check off like the character defining features. So we have it all there. Massing, roof line, window type, we do this all the time, ornamentation, just a whole list. And I can help put that together so that people will go, oh yeah, that is important, that little eave return there, or the ornamentation.
Can I poke in here? This latest one we had tonight was interesting. We have to be careful falling into traps with some of these. The one tonight was fairly easy, I think mainly because the house had been cut up a little bit. We didn't have original windows in most cases. He was keeping a certain scale. But what happened if we had turned him down? He would have not have been able to convert to a duplex because he wouldn't be able to get egress. But yet egress, in my looking through here, isn't one of our considerations. Same thing with someone I know very well that was out here just last week that tripped and fell on his own poop when he brought up a cost or timeline, things like that. But by the way, Don, I knew coming in that meeting that I shouldn't have said that, and you tricked me into saying it. But the reality is, like those 16 windows, there's a timeline issue. How do you rehabilitate 16 windows and there has to be a timeline value on that as far as replace now and fix as you go. You know what I'm saying? That it's not always feasible for somebody to come in there and do the whole thing all at once and make it so they can live in it right then. You can't have 16 holes in your house while you're living in it. That one's been bothering me a little bit as far as if we're going to do that, why can't we just say right in the guidelines, cost and energy efficiency and such are not considerations in the guidelines of this board? I mean, if we're going to say it, why can't we just say it in print so that we just get by it and not have to deal with it every time? Because I tripped right in. I knew it wasn't. I knew you wasn't going to say it. You tricked me into saying it, and I said it anyway. Well, so will the general public. They'll say it every time. Because that's the first thing on their head is how much is it going to cost me?
We're all thinking about cost. Yeah. But it really isn't something that we should have as one of our points of consideration.
And so also the fact that it had to be an egress window. That wouldn't, to me, it worked this time, but to me, that wouldn't be a consideration for replacing a historic window on a street facade.
No, but that's a good point, because we do have codes that, I'll use the example of the energy code. We can circumvent the energy code with updating an older building and leaving the single pane windows in. It'd never fly today with the energy code, but we have some of that latitude. But when we get to life safety issues like a window and the egress that you made fun of me on tonight because I couldn't, that comes back then, okay, how are we going to allow a larger window that meets egress that's still going to work into the architecture of the existing look? You know, it's like, okay, well, we've got this nice 3030, but we're going to put a 6030 next to it. And we'd rather have you mess with the window that's there.
Right. I mean, he followed the standards. I mean, life safety issues trump our issues with wood or vinyl.
But we could have turned him down.
But we also
Still
used an
project.
existing opening. We wouldn't have because,
We could have.
but we wouldn't have.
No, we could have.
Because we were meeting the
It was
standards.
It was one of our.
let me-
Not on a secondary elevation, it's.
And a safety issue.
And a safety issue. The facade is really where it becomes
Well,
more
yeah,
critical.
yeah,
but,
you're correct. On the
So we're following the
Yeah,
standards, we're
right,
trying
I
to,
agree. I agree.
to accommodate them, and he's trying to accommodate the building style and architecture.
This question, of course, life, health, and safety, but could we put in a guideline? Because Don's done some research. Okay, the first aluminum window was 1920. Can you put in a guideline, any building built prior to 1920 may not have all these other things that follow it? Or does that get too constrictive?
I don't think we need to put in our guidelines every single
Okay.
variation.
I was using examples.
I mean,
I'm just asking a question. It's okay.
I'm trying to figure out where to go from here. Do we want a special workshop where there's a lot of things we want to consider in this? I mean, I'm tempted to workshop it. On the other hand, I kind of feel like if we start assembling other guidelines from other cities and things like that, we could start to pick and choose, and maybe, I mean, Michelle, would you be interested in working with Hope and myself or Lou or Don to, what we did with the fences is we looked at other examples and started cobbling up.
I think that's the best
Our-
way.
Can we
guidelines.
have a meeting that's not, I mean, can we get together and have a workshop? Okay.
No, we'll have to notice as a meeting if it's a committee. So I think since you've just called out, how many people? 3 people? 3 out of 7? Is that committee? I mean, it's not quorum.
It's not a quorum.
So can they come and meet with me and talk to me about windows?
I believe so, as long as the quorum is not present.
Okay, so 3 of you can come meet with me in my office and we'll talk about windows.
I think that's the right way to go.
I think-
Let's not start from scratch. Let's,
so much.
you know so many guidelines you've read already. Let's read through some of those and decide and do some cherry picking.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to broaden the discussion. I mean, Bill Miles obviously knows how to do this. There's contractors out there who know what they're doing, and if we all work together, maybe it's something that gets a little more root and takes hold. So should we start with that? Just 3 of us can meet with Hope and start going over bits
Gather
and
some general
pieces.
information.
Yeah, I think it's just an informal meeting and we'll look at window information and kind of brainstorm. For example, what Commissioner Durney was just talking about, well, it was a secondary elevation. Is there more flexibility when it's a secondary elevation than when it's the primary elevation? Do we want to capture that thought process in our findings? So I think there's a lot, as the chair said, there's a lot to this. So I think if we could sit down, brainstorm, and then come back, when the fences didn't happen overnight. That took a long time, but I think we got a really good product. And I think we can get there.
Yeah, and I'd rather get there on our own than have an appeal to the Board of Supervisors and kind of have our backs up against the wall. And I think we'll look better if we're proactive on this, because like Don said, we have been inconsistent in the past, and all it's going to take is turning somebody down and them going back to the board, and we're going to have to make sure that we have legs to stand on there. So if we jump on this now, I think it's a good start. So, do you want to coordinate that?
Yeah, I'll coordinate, and we don't need a motion.
Okay, all right. Any other thoughts?
Then for the grant, we want to do a workshop. And then we've got like 2 things going on here. We want to make a little, the guidelines more specific, like the fence, for windows, and then do a workshop where we educate people?
I'd like to develop the guidelines and the findings, then go to, then determine how a workshop works. But I think we got to get our fundamental concepts in place, and then we can start to share.
So those are the first two. I have a general question, maybe you can answer for me, and I don't know, maybe you have the answer to this. Is it common that color and paint is not included in the historic district?
Actually, it is.
Right now, planning camp.
Actually, when we were at the forum program, I went to, I don't think you went to the session I was at. It was one of the very last sessions. And it was a woman from Denver, and it was sort of interesting, I'll just tell you, because they talked about windows, because they were talking about, the challenges of being in a historic district and being a commissioner in the district. And in the case of Denver, they have people do these thorough window surveys that they have to submit if they want to replace a window. And somebody said, well, how much does it cost to have one of those surveys done? And it was about $2,000. Just to apply to change your windows, you had to prepare that. Anyhow, the question came up, how many of your districts regulate color? And a lot of hands stayed down. So it's not uncommon to not regulate color. And if I get any inquiries about color, I say we don't regulate color.
When we formed the commission, it was we consciously did not include colors. It was
Saw that as a trap or something, or?
no. Well, yeah, we saw it was seen as a trap to getting the district formed and to getting the
Here's the reason I
commission
bring it up.
formed.
I did some work down in Chandler, Arizona, and along the main street, there was a guy that had 5 or 6 not historic houses, but older houses, didn't get his way at one of the meetings. And so what he did was he went and painted the houses fuchsia, orange, pink, lime green, just to piss off, excuse my language, the community and the city of the fact that he got turned down. Are we open to that by what we have currently? Shouldn't we have something in the guidelines somewhere saying it should be earth tones, it should be matching colors, and you don't think so?
No. Hopefully, we do our business in such a way that we don't have to deal with
So if we
that.
see a fuchsia house, we can turn it down.
No.
Can I ask you a question? What is it you do for a living? Look what you went through on Curry Street. I mean,
Thank goodness that particular building wasn't a historic district.
well, I know, but no, I'm saying, you wouldn't want people to come in and start to dig. I mean, everybody has a whole different concept of color. Fences and windows are one thing. I don't want to deal with color because your colors and my colors, except for our heads.
Still one paints themselves right next door to you.
I think,
The question would be, is color a character defining feature? And is there, for example, if you were in Salt Lake City, there's areas where everything is red brick. Well, that's a character defining feature. I don't think you could argue that in our district, color is a character defining feature that warrants regulation.
And I think the districts that do have color, like Charleston and a lot of Philadelphia, southern districts, it is a character defining feature, and all the buildings seem to date to a specific period, and so the colors that are common to that time period are the ones that they suggest using.
The Painted Ladies of San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
Our district is so, yeah.
Hope lives down the street from one with an airplane parked in the gable end roof.
Okay, are we done with E5?
Oh, I have one more ask
No.
for you. This is general questions. Want me to wait?
So there's one in
Yeah.
the crowd.
It has nothing to do with this particular item.
Yeah, let's go to staff reports, F.
Okay, I did not prepare a staff report for this meeting.
No, that's all right. F1 is discussion only for the staff report and commission reports comments.
Okay. Forgot what the question was now. Go ahead.
You speak,
I'll move to future agenda items and,
I just have a comment.
oh, go ahead.
I remember what it was.
Oh, wait.
I have a complaint of one of my clients that, again, we have things in the right-of-way in the historic district from time to time. Do we have a grasp on that as far as policing that?
Can you be more specific?
I can give you an address. I can't right at the moment. But placing debris or construction items in the right-of-way for lengthy periods of time.
Oh, is it like a construction dumpster or something?
I think it's more like leftover materials that if left unsaid, they might end up there for a few years.
I would email me in the morning with the address. I'll give it to code enforcement.
Talking to the guys at Jack Spar, I did get the chain of title for Jack Spar since 1867, and there's about 125 pages of backup that goes with it, so just so nobody else wants to duplicate efforts.
Michelle?
I'd like to have a report on the facade program.
The facade program that the Redevelopment Advisory Commission oversees.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Well, I have some concerns with the facade treatment downtown, so I want to understand the guidelines and the program.
And any other commission member reports or comments? Future agenda items. Jack Spar?
The chair did request that we get a briefing on Jack Spar. They are entirely receptive to coming here and giving you a report, but they had a conflicting event this evening for the Builders Alliance, so we'll get them on your calendar.
And to update the commission too, Michelle is volunteering with the development team on the bar, so I know they're in good hands there. And the development team are the same people that did Bentley, Farmers Bank, and the flour mill. Is that right?
Well, just Bill, but the architect and the engineer are different.
Yeah, and the architect actually was a huge help on the Presbyterian Church.
And-
Man, they have some real good historic expertise or rehab expertise on that team. So after meeting with them, I helped Michelle out yesterday, and after meeting with them, I'm much more comfortable with what's going on. Any other items? Public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the commission may approach the podium at this time to speak on matters relevant to or within the authority of the Historic Resources Commission, including any matter that's not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this public comment portion of the agenda. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll move to H, adjournment?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? We're adjourned at 7:48. 7.